this is the kit I would take with me for a short expedition, say 2 or 3 days. I'll start off with clothes. It's always best in a expedition to wear as many thin layers as possible to keep yourself warm, then 1 or 2 thick layers. This is mainly due to the fact if you get rained on, or for some reason you have to walk through a river or cross something to do with water, you would want to be able to take off a few, wet layers rather than ruin all your main clothes for the whole expedition. It's just a safety precaution, really. Make sure you always have a good fleece, a good waterproof, and some good trousers. I would double up on all of these things, obviously, in case some of them get wet. Boots or foot protection. Always make sure that you have good ankle protection here, just in case, if you're walking across some rough rocks, your ankle's obviously protected from turning. Always have a good grip, that's very important. Strong toes, strong heel. Depending on the terrain you're walking on, I walk on quite a few mountains, so flex is not a main thing I look for in a boot, due to the fact that I would be walking on maybe some quite thin ridges. You always want to be quite tight on your foot, it's quite snug, so you don't have that problem of blisters, because it's always very hard to walk on a foot that's got a blister. And if you're going to be walking for a few days, people seem to forget when they're walking, is very important to wear a hat. Obviously you want something with a bit of a lip to keep the sun out of your eyes when you're walking, because the sun can be very distracting and you don't want your vision impaired at all, obviously, if you're walking on some rough terrain. It also keeps your head warm, keeps the rain off your head. If your head gets cold, that's you out of the game instantly. My bag, I will always carry something like this. This is a waterproof lining. I'll put all my clothes, all my kit, everything in there. I don't want my bag to get penetrated by the rain. Obviously it does have a light waterproof cover, but that won't keep all the moisture out. So I will always line my bag with this. It's also, again, if I have to cross a river, which I will never look to do, because I'll plan ahead and found a crossing, this will keep it mainly from getting wet. And as soon as your kit gets wet, that is a big no-no. You really don't. My safety quickly, I will always carry here a survival bag. This is great. It will keep you warm, it will keep you dry in night. You always put this over your sleeping bag if you're camping outside to keep it from getting wet. You never want to get wet during the night. That can cause hypothermia, which is a massive danger in the outdoor. Also, if you're up a mountain and you have to call the mountain rescue team, you can put this over someone. It will keep them dry, it will keep them warm. And also when the helicopter comes, if they do need to get a helicopter, or the walkers will come up, they will be able to spot this instantly. So that is a major part of the kit. Moving on, you never really know how long you're going to be out. Sometimes you would like to plan ahead, but if complications do come down, like the weather, it's always important to have a full survival kit with you. This is a compact saw. You don't really want to rely on the saw on a blade, because that could take very long, and during a walk you want to conserve as much energy as possible. And carry a small fishing set, because if you're feeling really extreme, this will just allow you to gather some food. Tripwire, again for food. Flint and steel igniter, just it's a constant way of getting light. It's not the most efficient, but it will always work for you. If you don't have a tent with you, which again I would advise against, because a tent is always a definite source of shelter. It will keep you away from hypothermia. I would advise to definitely bring a blade. It doesn't matter if it's a small one, a big one, it doesn't really matter. Because you'll obviously, if you don't have a tent, you'll want to build yourself a tent. And the way to do this is with a basher, bit of paracord, get fine 2 trees, string it up between them, and then you have a one-sided shelter. And then on the other side, you can place leaves, trees, branches, all that, which again brings back to compact saw to seal off that side. And then obviously you'll want your survival bag to cover you during the night. Also, I will always bring a first aid kit with me. I will always make sure that it's topped out before I leave. Obviously, injury up in the mountains is a very serious thing. As soon as you injure yourself, if you're not with anyone, it can go into a life or death situation. So you always want to have your first aid kit with you. Whistle to alert people to the fact you're there. If you're up a mountain, you get injured. If you don't have any way of communicating, which I would always advise you do, bring a cell phone or a walkie-talkie or something that you can contact the authorities on. If you don't, you have the whistle. You give 3 blasts every minute or so. If someone does hear you and they have a whistle with them as well, they should give 6 blasts. This is the kind of call sign to tell them that, you know, they have received that you're in distress and they are coming to help you. Keep blowing on it, as obviously, if you haven't managed to. I wouldn't advise moving if you have injured yourself, because you really want to conserve your energy. But if it does get into that kind of life or death situation, I would always say life, you know, over limb. So I would sacrifice maybe a bit of your health to preserve your life. It's always a major thing. Foil blanket, safe blanket, very important you have that. That will conserve your heat. That is a definite lifesaver in situations. You obviously want a torch with you. You don't know if you're going to be walking into the night, and you obviously need something to help you see during that. I would head torch is very useful. It frees up your hands rather than a handheld torch. Always invest in a very good torch. You don't want it going out on you during a walk. Sport saves room. Waterproof matches. You never want to get caught in a mountain with some wet, useless matches. So waterproof matches, they're not as easy to ignite, but they will definitely save you. Water purification. If you're up a mountain and you go into, well, obviously the mountains, a stream from a mountain it provides you with pretty much fresh water. I would, you know, I would drink it. I would probably trek up the mountain a bit further, because there's always that one worry that mountaineers always have, that there will be a dead animal at the top of the stream which is polluting the water. If you are very worried about this, there's a few things you could do to get the main silt out. If you're not in the mountains and there's silt in the water that you're drinking, you can put a bit of material, maybe a bandage. Obviously don't use a bandage after you've done this. A bit of material, maybe your t-shirt, over the top of the water. Pour the water in. This should filter out the main bits of silt, which is going to, you know, complicate your drinking. Then, if you really want to do this properly, you can pour that water into a mess tin, boil that with some fire. If you know, I wouldn't do this in the middle of a walk, because you don't want to be setting up a fire and wasting your resources during them. If you have some kind of, you know, hexy blocks, then you can do that quite easily. Boil the water, get rid of the main things, and then if you want to do it absolutely perfectly and make sure there's no worries, you can use these are water purifying tablets. As you can see, one tablet purifies 1 litre of water. I will always carry 10 of these, because if I get trapped on a mountain, I don't know how long I'm going to be there. So that's 10 litres of water there, that's perfectly purified, that I know I'm going to get. You want good straps, you want it to be comfortable whilst you're walking, you want plenty of space. For my bag, I always choose a 60 plus 10, so that's a plus 10 bit at the bottom. That's where I always put my sleeping bag. It frees up a lot of room in the actual middle bit of the bag, which means I can carry as much stuff as I possibly need. Roll mat, it's always good to have a good roll mat. You always need a good night's sleep on a hike. This is quite essential. If you don't get a good night's sleep, you don't have much energy in the morning, and you definitely need energy on a hike. Always good. Waist straps, you don't want the bag sliding around on your back whilst you're walking. That can lead to irritation, and there's nothing worse than having an irritated back whilst you're walking. It is just uncomfortable, and you really do not want that. Bringing on a walk is walking poles. You may not need them. However, if you do sprain an ankle up a mountain or injure your leg, very important to have these. It will take a bit of weight off the ankle if you do need to get back down on it and the weather's coming down on you and there's no one around. It helps you a lot. You obviously don't want to be walking on an injured ankle. It can lead to further strains, further to complications, and just further discomfort. So I'd always bring a good pair of walking poles. If you don't want to spend a lot of money, get a very cheap pair. It's just another safety. I'm just going to talk about a tent. I don't actually have one available to me at the moment, so I won't be able to show you the kind of tent I would bring on a hike. I would always advise a tent that's kind of under 4 kilograms. You don't want to be walking with anything heavier than that. You don't want to be walking with anything bulky, because it will just take up bag space, and that is very essential. Very simple tent to put up. You want to be able to put your tent up in kind of less than 2 minutes, 3 minutes, because if you are putting up your tent and the weather is coming down and you've just set up a base camp, you don't want that to take too long. You want to be able to conserve your energy whilst you're putting your tent up, because through the whole hike, that is kind of the purpose. You want to be able to be ready for the next day. Otherwise, I'd always advise getting a high calorific food into you. Very obviously you want it to be able to cook it very quickly. You don't want to take up too much space, so I'd advise boiling bag meals, something like that. You know, something like mug shots, that kind of thing. You want it to be very high in calories. You want it to be able to replenish your energy after a day's hiking. I'd also advise certain snacks along the way to just keep you, topped up. I'd always also advise walking with either a platypus, that is a bag that has a tube leaning over the shoulder of your rucksack just to be able to sip on during the way, and also 2 litres of water during your whole hike, because you'll use this water mainly to cook. You'll use the water in the platypus to drink, and also you've also got your water purification stuff there to be able to replenish your water. One thing I would say is very important with the food that you eat is it has to be nice. You have to be able to enjoy it. There's nothing worse than getting to the end of a hike and you've been looking forward to getting to the end of it and then having to eat some kind of sludge that you know is good for you but you don't enjoy. You always want it to be good. You always want it to be kind of a pick-me-up at the end. It's very important to have that. It's very important for everyone. On the back of my bag is a carabiner. They're very useful for also climbing, that kind of stuff. But you can also, it allows you to be able to hook things onto the back of your bag if you don't have enough space. It's quite useful. You can use it to build obviously a shelter. It's very helpful for that. Just an extra grip, a bit stronger, something that's not going to get buffeted around by the wind. And yeah, it's a very useful thing. You should always remember when you get into a bit of trouble in the mountains or on a hike, is shelter, warmth, first aid. You have to have a plan, water and food. Once you have all of these, you're in a much better situation. Plan ahead, plan for further obstacles, plan how you're going to get said injured person back safely. If the weather's come down, possibly always, you always have to plan ahead. So a thing that I don't have here, that I would always make sure I do carry, is a bivvy. If you don't know what a bivvy is, it's basically a put-up shelter. It's got no supports. 2 hikers, 4 hikers, 6 hikers, depends on how big the bivvy is. What you do is you put it over your head, you sit down on the edge. This keeps you from getting wet, and then also your body heat is enough to generate heat inside. This will stop people from getting hypothermia. It will keep you dry, it will keep you warm. It's a real lifesaver in the mountains.